opposite corner, because when I did, I
walked. Okay, well, I'm here to talk about where I got my research inspiration from. And I want to start by talking about actually my faith background. I grew up in a very religious home. My parents are Baha'i. I still consider myself a Baha'i. If it's okay if you haven't heard of the religion, it's not well known. But the most important belief in our faith is this idea of the oneness of humanity, so that we're all part of one human family. And the second most important belief is that because we're all connected, our main job in this life is to work towards the well-being of our brothers and sisters around the world and to improve the social good. So that's how I was raised, and I still believe those things. And so all the research that I do is based on this concept and this moral position. So then you can imagine the 2016 elections happened, and they were completely opposed to my moral values. And I felt, I was a PhD student in the Spanish department. I was doing it part-time, but at that moment I felt a real urgency, and I felt like I needed to leverage my skills, because I speak Spanish, to support kind of the newly vulnerable population of Latinx people in this country. And I was like, I have to do something. And so I started looking for jobs, and the job that I found was, it was a temporary part-time position. It was a seasonal job working for ABLE, which is basically legal aid up here. And we worked with farm workers and agricultural workers. So you go around southwestern Ohio and you check up on the people who are here just for the season to make sure, there's a number of things. You make sure that they know how to pay their taxes. You make sure that they have adequate housing. You also, on the heavier end, you make sure they're not being trafficked, and that they feel safe, and that they haven't had their passports confiscated, and all kinds of things like that. And this was super interesting to me for a number of reasons, but one of which is that I grew up in Ohio, and this is a very apt metaphor for the people in this room. I grew up in this area of Ohio, and I felt like I had this kind of, personal base layer map of Ohio, and then it was like doing this work, somebody clicked check on another layer, and I saw the same area that I grew up in a completely different light. So there were H2A workers living 15 minutes down the road from where I live, and I'm always looking for people to speak Spanish with, and I was like, how have I never seen you? How did I not know this whole population was here? And it became really interesting to me. And so a few of the things that I learned from that were, one, migrant and seasonal farm workers are kind of in three bins. There's US citizens and green card holders. They come up from the South. Many of them are families. Then there's people who are undocumented. They often live where they work to avoid detection. And then there's this third group called H2A workers, and they're seasonal guest workers. They come here for the season to work in whatever crop they're working in. And the thing about them that's important to know is that they're covered by a different set of laws, and they're protected and also vulnerable in different ways from the other groups that do this kind of work. And it's also important to think about the fact that they're transnational, but not in this elite jet-setting way. They're constantly coming and going, but not business class kind of a thing. And so I became really curious about this group of people. As you can see, they have they've increased, the composition of farm labor has changed a lot in the last 10 years, and there's more and more H2A workers coming. And so these people are here for a little bit, and then they go, and then they come back, and I wanted to know more about them and what it's like to live in two different places, to live somewhere for a short period of time, and then have to come back the next year where you don't speak the language. And because I'm interested in health as a very applied way of doing social good in the world, I wanted to know how they access healthcare when they're here. Do they access healthcare? And it's kind of an interesting way of looking at space and mobility across spectrum. So that's cool. I have no idea how much time I had.
That was 4 minutes and 30.
Okay, great.